This week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim was decapitatingly awesome. It was also really dark and intense, and it also featured the introduction of a number of new characters and the exit of a few others. I really liked this episode. It was one of those episodes that when it first started out, I thought it was going to be kind of a bummer. I wasn't going to enjoy it as much because the first half was very slow, but by the second half of the episode, you are just amped up. And it's amazing me that only 5 episodes into Parasyte the Maxim, they've already killed off Shinichi's parents. By the end of this week's episode, they are pretty much confirmed to both be dead, especially because his mom has been taken over by a parasite, and his father's existence is currently unknown. But last time we saw him, he was currently the mayor of Strugglesville, so I can't imagine he's going to be getting out of that situation anytime soon. But the most important thing I think about this week's episode, aside from the deaths of Shinichi's parents, is the introduction of this new character by the name of Kana. And Kana is very unassuming, because when you see her for the first time, she just looks like this stereotypical cute anime character. But she associates with this group of goons who want to do nothing more than beat up people and steal their lunch money. And Shinichi, being the main protagonist he feels that he has to stand up for the little man. In particular, he's actually standing up for that one bully he got into a fight with. And this leads to a scene where he just gets the snot beat out of him. And then Kana walks over to him, and she looks inside of his head and his eye, and she suddenly realizes that something is living inside of him. And this is your first clue to let you know that there are going to be people within this universe who have the ability to literally sense the parasites within people's bodies. Or as Migi said, they're able to literally pick up on their wavelengths. And this is also a good clue because it also shows that Kana herself is not a parasite-infected human. She seems to be fully human, and she's just very curious about what's really going on with Shinichi. And this all eventually leads to a scene where, again, he's confronted by Kana's gang, and they start to wail on him. And then that's when all of the people from his school decide to come in and turn it into a big West Side Story brawl between the Jets and the Sharks. And it's pretty exciting, but we don't really get to see any of it. Now, that final scene was intense and gory, and I really like how they tied the beginning of the episode into that, because the episode actually opens up with this couple who are driving around at night, and this guy just flies off the side of the road, and there's this one girl in the car who's been taken over by a parasite, and the body won't move anymore, and she decides she's going to have to migrate to another. This is important because we've never actually seen this happen before. And literally, she just jumps into the body of this guy, and she's having a lot of problems with controlling it, and actually, a lot of that might have to do with the fact that they can't, completely convert from going to female to male. And she even comments that she's having a trouble with this because the dude actually wets his pants right there. And then by the end of the episode, it almost seems like they're setting up something kind of nice and picturesque with Shinichi's parents looking over this cliff, looking at this beautiful sunset, when suddenly that one parasite erupts from out of nowhere, its head splits open and decapitates his mother and severely injuring the father. And like I said, we don't really get to see what happens to his dad because he just goes over to a phone booth, tries to call him, and then he just sort of collapses and that's it. And even the parasite who comes home to Shinichi mentions that maybe she should go back and finish him off. But it's that final scene that is really intense and strange because Shinichi realizes that one of those parasites are about to attack him, and he even has Migi ready right there, and slowly they build it up, and I'm really glad they showed it because I thought, ooh, this would be a really great opportunity to put up a to-be-continued screen before we saw who it is. But they show that it's his mother, she's taken over by one of the parasites, her head explodes open, and the battle's getting ready to begin. And that's pretty much the end of this week's incredibly intense episode. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim, it was another really good one. It was very slow in the first half, but I think that was important to introduce the character of Kana and to show what she's all about. Clearly, she's going to be one of the main leads, and I can't really wait to see, how she is connected to the other parasites and why her abilities work, and there probably are other people who can sense this. We've already seen that there's a lot of characters in the series who are already sort of aware over the fact that the parasites are sort of slowly taking over humanity, and they're realizing that their friends and family aren't quite what they used to be. The thing about this episode, though, is it's all going to be completely overshadowed by that final scene with Shinichi's mother getting her head decapitated and then taken over by a parasite. I just didn't think it was going to happen like that so soon. In fact, I was sort of blissfully telling myself in the previous episode that, well, now his parents are just going to go off and do their own thing, and this way we won't have to worry about Shinichi having to talk to his parents anymore, and they'll just come up with a contrived way like they're on vacation the entire time. They decide to immediately sweep that under the rug in this week's episode by basically killing off his parents and giving him free reign to pretty much do what he wants and team up with Miggy so that he can go like on a full offensive against these parasites. And I think that's good because it means the plot is going to pick up significantly at this point. Otherwise, this episode actually did have a little bit of room for humor. In fact, there was this really great scene after Shinichi was protecting his friend Murano from all of the gang members when they went back to his house, and he so boldly even asked her to stay over that night, and she just sort of gives him the cold shoulder. Although it's pretty obvious they have some sort of love connection going on. Otherwise, on the technical side of things, this was another pretty good episode of the series, pretty clean and consistent, especially actually in the fight scenes where Shinichi's just getting the shit beat out of him. It's really fluid and it looks really awesome. I was kind of hoping there would be a little more battling with Migi this week, especially when he's confronted with his mother, but that leads to that sort of stereotypical scene where he doesn't know whether to believe it's actually his mother anymore, or if the parasite has taken full control, and he's basically just being blissfully ignorant to all of this, even threatening to cut off his own right hand, which belongs to Migi. And that also brings back to the scene where Kano, where they shook hands for the first time. She can even sense it when they're shaking hands, and that kind of goes in line with what Murano did in some of the previous episodes when they were holding hands walking home. She switched places and decided to hold his other hand because there's just something not quite right about Migi. But otherwise, I think this was a really good episode, filled to the brim with suspense, good animation, a little bit of humor, a little bit of action, and that really creepy scene at the very end of this week's episode, which is undoubtedly going to set the tone for the rest of this season. So, I liked this episode. I don't think it was perfect. I think the first half was a little slow, but it was all made up for by the second half of the episode and all of its great action and creepiness. So, I'm giving this week's episode a 4 out of 5. Not a perfect episode, but damn near perfect, and one that if you're a fan of either the Parasyte anime series or manga version, you should definitely check out. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and like the video. Before you guys leave today, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim. Were you shocked to see Shinichi's parents killed off so early in the series? And what do you want to see from the future of Parasyte the Maxim? Also, before you guys leave, please subscribe to our channel if you have not already. You can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You guys can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.